Hey, what's up, guys? It is that boy Kyrie here, and today I'm back with another video. And today we're going to be looking at the housing market. So up here I have the historical U.S. home prices from 1953 to 2022. That's not really super duper relevant. The 1953 part, what we're looking at is just the last 30 years. Okay, because that's sufficient enough to sort of talk about the problems that we're seeing in the cost of housing, right? So from 1993, we had the price of housing at around $210,000 adjusted for inflation. So that's $210,000 of today's money. So even though the price of housing was about $100,000 per house back then, just for today's money, it's about $210,000. So we see that today it's around $380,000 for just one home, right? So we went up. We went way up. We went about $180,000 or $170,000 extra to the price of a home. And we're going to be sort of looking at why that is and what I think the potential solution to this problem would be. But first, we're going to look at the conventional wisdom and the conventional sort of solutions given by the left as to what they think the problems are and as to what they think the solutions would be. And of course, I would be remiss if I did not start this off by talking about the common meme of like getting the pod, eat the bugs, bro, and talking about the World Economic Forum and that sort of thing. And so first, I'm going to be kind of debunking the idea that the World Economic Forum really wants you to own nothing and be happy, that they really want you to get in the pod and eat the bugs, even though they do want you to get in the pod and they do want you to eat the bugs. So below I have this article by the Globe and Mail, which is a Canadian news source, and it sort of goes into the origin of the own nothing, be happy sort of thing, because that exact quote was from a 4chan post. It refers to an article, which is really like just an op-ed type of piece, on the World Economic Forum's agenda website. And it's a weird article. I read it. It was like, okay, welcome to 2030. I own nothing, have no privacy, life has never been better. And it was kind of a weird utopian thing, but it did end up on the actual World Economic Forum website just because, right? And so they themselves never really said that, hey, you should own nothing and be happy, and we want everybody to own nothing and be happy. Although it's kind of implied that that's sort of where they get their utopian ideal from. Going sort of into that, we've already talked about like pod living in my watermelon video. You should go check that out if you haven't checked it out already. I'll leave a link in the description. And if you're not watching, like honestly, like that was a pretty good video in my opinion. So we're gonna be looking at a different type of pod, right? Because these pod things are popping up all over the place in all types of different countries. And in America, we have sort of like the California pod style of living. And now we've got the British pod. And honestly, the British pod is superior to the American pod. I would say that the British pod's probably like, I would say it's A tier, honestly. British pod, A tier. American pod, Californian pod, I would put it at D or F tier, honestly. Like nobody wants the American pod.
The Conker originally started with a tree house for my children, and they wanted something like a shed in our trees, and there was no way I was going to build a shed. So we decided that we were going to, between us, that we were going to build a ball or a sphere. The idea was that as a young person or young couple, you buy two Conkers together, and then you have a child, then you order another room. So you can latch another Conker to your the two that you've got. And just imagine when the kids leave home, you could end up with the child taking their shell with them to start their own home.
Okay, so we watched that little clip, and I played it start to finish just so you could see what the guy was saying and his reasoning behind it. So I think that this is a actually pretty decent approach to doing things. That being said, I do think that this has its drawbacks. I don't think most people would really ideally want to live in an actual sphere where you can just see in the windows. Obviously, like, they could make pod blinds or something, so that way, like, if you're naked or you take a shower or whatever, and you just run around the house with no clothes on, like, nobody can just, like, see in your pod windows. But I do think there's something there, and that this actually is not a bad idea. So I'll give a point to the pod people, right? But the bug people, I don't like them. I sort of have, we're not going to watch any of these videos, right? But there's all these videos talking about eating bugs. It was around the time it started becoming a thing when the Great Reset people in the World Economic Forum came out with the Great Reset. So everybody's talking about, oh, get in the pod, eat the bugs. And there's all these videos talking about everyone should eat bugs. Eating bugs is good for you. And, oh yeah, in other cultures, they eat the bugs, bro. We need to start eating the bugs. And here's how to actually eat every insect so that you can just eat the bugs, bro. Because we already know, like, we're going into a population collapse because the birth rate's low. And so now we're not going to have enough farmers. We're not going to have enough people to sustain an aging population. So they're looking into other ways of producing food. And one of those ways is just like, okay, just eat the bugs, bro. And I think it's funny. All right, and so now that we've looked at the left's reasoning on sort of the housing problem, we're going to look at more of a right-wing approach. So there's this common meme going around of nobody wants to work anymore, and people are lazy, they're relying on government handouts. There's like this big gap between jobs and like the number of people who can actually fill those jobs. There's like a gap of about 3 million people. So there's just like 3 million open jobs that, like, even if everybody was working, there would still be 3 million new jobs. And so a lot of people are quiet quitting. A lot of people are doing a bunch of that sort of thing where they're realizing, okay, well, is it even worth? If rent's like so expensive and like I could work this job, I'm going to be miserable. You know, like, am I even going to be able to afford what I want? Because the reality is, you might not be able to be. You have a low-paying job. And of course, on the right, there's like this dangerous mentality that you should just accept the system and you got to do what you can to work within the system. So there's like this toxic movement of people like, up your grind set, bro. What you need to do is you need to work 60 to 80 hours a week and you'll be fine, dude. Just get like 3 or 4 different jobs, bro. That's all you need to do. And like, that's just so toxic. And so now that we looked at the right solution of just get a better job, bro, we're going to like go into some of the reasons why like housing might be so expensive. And we're going to see what a better solution would be. Yeah, so now that we've talked about the left's solution to doing things, and specifically I was talking about the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset and that sort of thing. There is also the option of universal basic income, but I think that just leads to inflation. So we're just going to immediately dismiss it. I don't need to talk about that. Other people probably have already talked about it enough. So now we're going to get into the effect of zoning on housing prices. And basically, zoning is where the government artificially restricts the price of housing. So it includes minimum lot sizes, maximum building heights, planning approval processes, fees that you have to pay the government in order to start building things, and all of those sorts of things. Regulatory, well, yeah, so basically zoning is regulatory measures taken by the government to affect your housing. And as we can see from this like sort of case study of cities in Australia, it's the Cato Institute. What are you gonna do? These are the numbers that I have to work with, right? But in Melbourne, 69%, LOL, of all of the housing costs is just associated to zoning. 42% in Brisbane, 54% in Perth, and it's sort of similar from what I've seen in American cities as well. You'd have to kind of go and crunch the numbers to try and find or speculate what it would be in American cities, because America is inherently different than Australia, but it's still kind of the same in that most of the people gravitate towards the coast. So like on the east and west coast, that's where the majority of people are. In the middle of America, it's just a bunch of empty land and broken roads and a bunch of meth houses. So, like nobody really wants to live there. It sucks to suck. Except for maybe Texas. That's where all the X's are. But yeah, so you can kind of speculate what it would be, right, in America, because it's very, very hard to sort of quantify that. But I would say that on the coast and in a bunch of states, like probably most states, the cost of housing is so high because it's artificially raised because of the regulations put in place by the government in terms of zoning. So you could buy, right? Me and my friend James were looking into buying just land a few years ago, right? Because it was only for like $1,500. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I have $1,500. Like, what if I buy the land? Like, could I do something with it a little bit later on? Whatever. And the thing is, that land was zoned for recreational use, meaning that like you could only use it for campsites, you could use it to create a park, you could use it for whatever, but you couldn't do anything else with it. And in order to reclassify that land, you'd have to basically lobby the government yourself and pay a fine and talk with people, and then you could reclassify what that land is zoned as, but only big companies can really do that on a consistent basis anyways. And so they can buy up all this land for like super duper cheap and then just like pay some fines, bro, and whatever, and then come out with profitable commercial property and reclassify that land as being something else, whereas the average normie is not going to be able to do that. And so if we had it so to where you could just buy land and then like there was no artificial restrictions on what you could do with that land, so if you wanted to live there because it's your property, you would be able to live there, then that would eliminate somewhere between 35-ish%, I would say on average, to maybe as much in some cities as 60% or near some cities, right? Like, so within an hour and a half of some cities, because like you may not want to live particularly in the city. You might want to live a little bit outside the city. You go to the city for work or whatever, it's going to be a long commute, but like you probably save a shit ton of money. You're saving between 40, 50, 60, 70, 80% because it's kind of crazy how much money that you could save if there just wasn't this artificial limit on the supply of land put in place by governments. And then I just kind of want to point out that these estimates are basically similar to what other researchers have found, including studies in Southern California, Florida, New Zealand, Manhattan, and then Europe as well. So included also in the zoning is a maximum allowable amount of zoning reclassification permits and use of regulations. I'm going to try and see if I can get the number here. Okay, so we have a case study from Boston, where because of the limits on minimum lot size when building stuff, it's associated with a 50% drop in building permits. And then also we know that states can cap the amount of building that you can do annually, right? So some cities directly limit supply by capping the annual number of building permits. So even if you wanted to build something on your land, or you wanted to get a Conquer pod, bro, you couldn't do that because, oh, well, you don't have the permit for it, because we're going to artificially limit the supply of the permits. Yeah, and if you're worrying that I'm taking this out of context, I did read the whole entire thing beforehand, but I will link this particular thing inside of the description below. So you can go ahead and check out this article, and you'll see what I'm saying is true. A lot of what's associated with the cost of housing is not only zoning, which I've already proven can be as much as 50% off the cost of a house. Average cost of a home, $380,000. You split that in half. You split in half of $380,000, right? So you're saving $190,000. $190,000 is going to be split off from what you would have been paying anyways, just because of the zoning. So the cost of a house would just go down to $190,000. But it gets better. It gets even better because you could also purchase a tiny home. You could get a Conquer pod, and you could do things like that where it's like, okay, well, maybe instead of just having a single family home that's like a 3 or 4 bedroom with an attached bathroom, whatever, you could just kind of just pay as you go and get a small tiny home to start off with, if you're just living by yourself or if it's just you and the wife, whatever. And then as time goes on, you have more money, or if you have kids, then you get a second detached house. Well, maybe not detached. You probably want the room there. The baby can live with you inside of your tiny home. And then by the time the baby's like 10 or so, or maybe 8, like depending on how mature the child is, you could get like a little tiny separate, like little detached house or a Conquer pod or whatever. It's not going to be that expensive. It's going to be way less expensive than just buying the building materials and having an interconnected house, unless you do it yourself, right? And so below, I'm going to have examples of homes that are super duper amazingly affordable. So this tiny home right here, right? And it looks pretty nice. It looks pretty decent. Like if it's just a 1 bed, it's only $12,000 in today's money. $12,000 for the building. And then on top of that, the zoning would go down by 50%. Right? So you're paying like a certain amount for the land, depending on what city you're living in. I think that land prices might go up or down, depending on how much land you have. Land prices might go up or down. But if we're just looking at the cost of the building materials, only $12,000, right? You get a tiny house in the trees, whatever. Like this thing, it's like some of these are pre-built, by the way. $4,000. You get a dome-shaped home. You buy some domes, right? Out of concrete, by the way, so it's not wood like the other 2 houses, right? It's concrete. $3,500. I don't know how I feel about this one. Spend the extra $1,000. Don't get this one. This one's F tier, okay? And then like if you do a DIY type thing, like you can do it for $500, but don't do a DIY type thing. Just get professional help, okay? $4,000 is way more affordable than $380,000. Right? Then with the cost of the land, it's not going to be too prohibitively expensive. And to sort of prove this point, next thing I have for you is a plot of land in a major city in America that costs only about $26,000. So $4,000 plus like $26,000 is $30,000. That's 1/10 the cost. And if you did the zoning laws, the land wouldn't even cost $26,000. Cost 50% less. Cost 50% less. So it would be about $13,000. A person could get a home for $20,000. A home would be less than a car for a small single person home. So over here we have like a 1,900 square feet property, right? That just like, I don't know why there's these concrete blocks there. Whatever. I don't care. And then like, you know, like you have a neighbor. There's obviously a house there. Whatever. But it's $2,600 It's on Jackson Street in Orlando, which is kind of near downtown. It's not that far from downtown. And so, $2,600 divided in half, up to a half from zoning, right? And then you pay like $4,000 for a tiny home, and then you tell homeowners associations to go fuck themselves, right? You just ban them. Get rid of homeowners associations. Don't have them as a requirement. Like maybe you could do a homeowner association, but like I think homeowner associations are just cancerous in general, right? So you could buy a home on this plot of land, like just make a tiny house, maybe 2 or 3 tiny houses if you have like a multiple family unit, right? And it's gonna only be $20,000. And you just pay property taxes, whatever. And then you could even build extra tiny houses and rent them out to people just to pay off your property taxes. And then they'll pay the utilities. You can even make a little bit of money off of it. Or you could just not pay any property taxes off of it because you don't need 1,900 square feet in order to put a tiny home on. You could put like a second, third, fourth, fifth tiny home on there, as long as you didn't have the government regulations holding you back for what, like $50,000? And then those people are going to pay you, and that extra $30,000 is going to pay itself back. And so that would be my solution to this messed up housing market that we have right now. Because $380,000 for a home, that's ridiculous. We need to tell the government to go F itself, and we don't need to go over to the van life lifestyle, okay? Not worth $50,000 for a van that's livable and has heating and has like a kitchen and stuff, or $20,000 for a house. Anyways, that's it for today's video. I am that boy Kyrie. Please remember to like and subscribe. And if you have any thoughts on this subject matter, please be sure to leave a comment in the comment section, and I'll be sure to get back to you if I can. I probably won't though.